The flight of assumptions. Jordan Mitchell stood at the check-in counter of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the gentle hum of bustling passengers a backdrop to his calm demeanor. Dressed in a plain gray hoodie, jeans, and spotless white sneakers, he exuded the effortless simplicity of someone who believed actions spoke louder than appearances. His dark brown skin glowed under the soft fluorescent lights, and his neatly groomed hair reflected his meticulous nature. Jordan was the kind of man who avoided attention. Despite being the son of Paul Mitchell, a celebrated entrepreneur and philanthropist, he had made it a point to forge his own path. Today, that path led him to Los Angeles, where he was scheduled to meet with investors for a groundbreaking tech project he had developed. He preferred flying economy, but on this occasion, his assistant had surprised him with a first-class upgrade. "Consider it a treat for all your hard work," she had said. Reluctantly, Jordan accepted. After all, who could turn down the promise of extra legroom and better coffee? As he approached the boarding gate, Jordan felt a mixture of excitement and determination. His mind raced with ideas for his presentation, the potential impact his project could have, and the satisfaction of knowing that his hard work was beginning to pay off. At the gate, a flight attendant with a warm smile scanned his boarding pass. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Mitchell," she said politely. He nodded and proceeded down the jet bridge toward the plane. Just as he reached the aircraft's entrance, he encountered another flight attendant, a young woman with strawberry blonde hair tied neatly into a bun. Her uniform was pristine, her makeup flawless, and her expression sharp and assessing. Her name tag read Katie Barnes. "Good morning," Jordan said with a polite nod, extending his boarding pass for her to inspect. Katie barely glanced at it before her eyes flicked up to meet his. Her gaze swept over his casual attire, and her lips curled into a thin, dismissive smile. "Coach seating is down that way," she said, gesturing toward the rear of the plane without even bothering to check his ticket. Jordan blinked, taken aback. "Actually, my seat is in first class," he said, his tone even but firm. He held the boarding pass up for her to see. Katie raised an eyebrow, her disbelief evident. "First class," she repeated, her tone laced with skepticism. "Are you sure?" Jordan's stomach twisted, but he remained calm. "Yes, I'm sure," he replied, stepping past her. Katie didn't protest further, but muttered something under her breath as he moved toward his seat. He found his assigned spot, 2A, and settled in. Jordan placed his carry-on bag neatly under the seat in front of him, retrieved a book from its pocket, and tried to relax. But the interaction with Katie lingered in his mind. Her condescending tone, the way she had looked at him as though he didn't belong. It was a familiar feeling, one he hadn't encountered in a while, but knew all too well. He reminded himself to let it go. Don't let her ruin your day, he thought. He opened his book and began reading, determined to focus on the positive. An ominous start. As the flight attendants prepared for takeoff, Jordan observed Katie interacting with other first-class passengers. She was all smiles, her demeanor warm and engaging. She offered drinks, exchanged pleasantries, and even laughed at their jokes. But when she passed by Jordan, her expression shifted to one of indifference, her body language stiff and unwelcoming. At first, he thought he might be imagining it. Maybe she's just having a bad day, he reasoned. But the pattern continued. When the flight reached cruising altitude, Katie began distributing beverages. Jordan waited patiently for her to approach. When she finally did, he smiled and said, "Excuse me, may I have a glass of water, please?" Katie looked at him as though he had asked for something absurd. Her forced smile barely masked her irritation. "Maybe in a bit," she replied curtly before moving on without another word. Jordan watched as she served other passengers promptly, offering them a level of attentiveness that starkly contrasted with how she treated him. He couldn't help but notice the subtle glances exchanged between some passengers, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Nearby, an elderly gentleman with kind eyes and a weathered face leaned toward Jordan. "Don't let her get to you, son," he said quietly. I've been watching. Some people just don't know how to treat others right. Jordan nodded, grateful for the man's words, but the knot in his chest tightened. He had worked hard to build a reputation as someone who treated everyone with respect. To be met with such blatant disregard simply because of someone's assumptions about him felt like a slap in the face. The breaking point. As the flight progressed, Katie's dismissive behavior continued. When Jordan requested a blanket, she ignored him. When he inquired about the in-flight meal options, she acted as though she hadn't heard him. He could feel the tension building within him. He had always prided himself on his ability to remain calm under pressure, but this was testing his limits. Halfway through the flight, he decided he had endured enough. Rising from his seat, he walked to the front of the cabin, where he politely asked to speak with the head of customer service. A few moments later, a woman in her late 40s with a warm smile approached him. Her name tag read Linda Foster, and her demeanor immediately put Jordan at ease. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Linda, the head of customer service for this flight. How can I assist you?" Jordan took a deep breath and explained the situation, careful to remain respectful despite his frustration. "I've tried multiple times to request basic services like water and a blanket, but each time I've been ignored or treated rudely by one of your attendants," he said. Linda's expression turned serious as she listened. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Mr. Mitchell. This is not the level of service we strive to provide. I assure you, I'll address this matter immediately." As Linda spoke, Katie appeared in the background, her face pale and her expression nervous. She had overheard the conversation and now seemed to realize the gravity of her actions. Jordan noticed the shift in her demeanor but said nothing. He returned to his seat, hopeful that Linda's intervention would resolve the issue. A lesson yet to come. As the plane continued its journey to Los Angeles, Jordan reflected on what had transpired. He had no intention of seeking revenge or causing trouble for Katie, but he couldn't ignore the larger issue at play. This was about more than a rude flight attendant. It was about the assumptions people made, the prejudices they harbored, and the small, everyday ways those biases could chip away at a person's dignity. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would lead to a powerful and unexpected lesson for Katie, for the passengers, and even for himself. The ripple effect. As the flight coasted above the clouds, Jordan Mitchell sat quietly in his seat, gazing out of the window. The sprawling expanse of white below reminded him of endless opportunities, but the turbulence of the morning lingered in his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been unfairly judged, not for who he was, but for what someone assumed him to be. Linda Foster, the head of customer service, had assured him that the issue with Katie Barnes would be addressed promptly. However, Jordan knew that a superficial apology or momentary adjustment wouldn't erase the sting of her dismissive behavior. It wasn't just about him. He thought about others who might not have the same composure to confront such treatment. An atmosphere of unease. The air in the first-class cabin had shifted. Passengers had begun to notice the tension between Jordan and Katie, though most pretended to ignore it. Some stole glances at Jordan, their eyes curious but hesitant. Others focused on their meals, books, or laptops, choosing to avoid what was clearly becoming a visible conflict. Katie, meanwhile, seemed increasingly unsettled. Her usual confidence had given way to nervous glances and stiff movements. She fumbled with the drink tray, spilled a glass of champagne, and avoided eye contact with Jordan altogether. A passenger seated across the aisle, an impeccably dressed man in a tailored navy blue suit, cleared his throat. "Excuse me, miss," he called out to Katie, raising a hand to catch her attention. Katie turned abruptly, her professional smile plastered back in place. "Yes, sir. How can I assist you?" The man leaned slightly forward. "I couldn't help but notice the way you've been handling things. I've flown with this airline for years, and this isn't the level of service I'm accustomed to. What's going on here?" Katie's smile faltered. I'm not sure what you mean, sir," she stammered. He tilted his head, his piercing blue eyes unwavering. "I think you do," he said, his voice calm but firm. That gentleman over there, he nodded toward Jordan, has been treated differently from the rest of us since the moment he boarded. Care to explain why? A growing chorus of voices. Before Katie could respond, the elderly gentleman seated near Jordan chimed in. It's not just him. I saw it too, he said, his voice steady and resolute. That young man asked for water over an hour ago, and you haven't even acknowledged him since. It's not right. A younger woman with curly red hair sitting in the row behind Jordan nodded in agreement. Honestly, I thought I was imagining it, but now that it's been pointed out, it's pretty obvious. Katie's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. She glanced around the cabin, her composure unraveling as more passengers began to voice their observations. Linda Foster, alerted by the commotion, reappeared in the cabin. Her sharp eyes immediately assessed the situation, and she approached Katie with a composed but authoritative demeanor. Katie, Linda said quietly, motioning for her to step aside. Katie hesitated, glancing at the growing crowd of concerned faces, then followed Linda toward the galley at the front of the plane. Behind closed curtains, Linda pulled the curtain closed, creating a small barrier between themselves and the rest of the cabin. Her tone was measured but firm as she addressed Katie. I need to understand what's going on here, Linda began. I've received multiple complaints from passengers about your behavior toward Mr. Mitchell. This isn't the level of professionalism we expect on our flights. Katie wrung her hands nervously, her eyes darting to the floor. I didn't mean anything by it, she muttered. I wasn't sure if he was supposed to be in first class. Linda's brow furrowed. And why would you assume that? Katie didn't respond immediately. She knew the answer was one she couldn't say aloud without confirming what everyone likely already suspected. Katie, Linda continued, her voice softening slightly. We don't make judgments about our passengers based on how they look or what they're wearing. Every passenger deserves respect and equal treatment, no matter what. Katie nodded silently, but her thoughts were a whirlwind. She had started the day like any other, focused on her duties and maintaining her professional image. She hadn't anticipated that a single assumption could unravel so quickly and publicly. The quiet resolve of Jordan Mitchell. Back in his seat, Jordan overheard bits of the conversation, but chose not to react. He had already made his point, and the attention was beginning to wear on him. All he had wanted was a smooth flight, not a spectacle. The man in the navy blue suit leaned over again. You handled that with remarkable grace, he said, extending a hand. David Chambers, I'm in corporate law. If you ever need a good lawyer, let me know. Jordan shook his hand, a small smile forming on his lips. Appreciate that, he replied. The elderly gentleman from earlier smiled warmly. You're a class act, son. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Jordan nodded in gratitude, the kindness of strangers easing the weight on his shoulders. A public apology. When Katie returned to the cabin, her demeanor was entirely different. She approached Jordan hesitantly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Mr. Mitchell, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I want to sincerely apologize for the way I treated you earlier. It was unprofessional and wrong, and I'm deeply sorry for any offense I caused. The cabin fell silent as passengers watched the exchange. Jordan met her gaze, his expression calm but unreadable. After a moment, he spoke. Apology accepted, he said simply. But I hope this is a learning experience, not just for how you treat me, but how you treat everyone. Katie nodded quickly, her cheeks flushing again. It will be, she said earnestly. Linda stepped forward, addressing the entire first-class cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to personally apologize for any discomfort caused during this flight. We hold ourselves to the highest standards of service, and we will ensure this situation is addressed appropriately. Thank you for your patience. The passengers murmured their approval, the tension in the air gradually dissipating. A seed of change. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Jordan felt a sense of closure. The day hadn't gone as he had expected, but it had highlighted an important truth. Small actions can create ripples, and sometimes those ripples lead to change. Katie, meanwhile, replayed the events in her mind, her embarrassment overshadowed by a growing awareness of her own biases. For the first time, she saw how easily assumptions could cloud judgment and harm others. For Jordan, the journey wasn't just about reaching his destination. It was about reaffirming his belief in the power of dignity and respect. And as the plane touched down on the runway, he resolved to keep pushing forward, not just for himself, but for everyone who deserved a seat at the table, no matter where they came from or how they looked. The power of perception. The wheels of the plane hit the Los Angeles runway with a slight jolt, pulling Jordan Mitchell from his thoughts. As the aircraft taxied toward the gate, he exhaled deeply, grateful that the ordeal was nearly over. The events of the flight had left him reflective but resolved. While Katie's apology was a start, Jordan knew the situation symbolized something far more profound. A lesson in perception, biases, and the silent battles people face every day. A world of contrasts. The Los Angeles terminal buzzed with its characteristic energy, a mix of hurried passengers, airport staff maneuvering carts, and announcements echoing over loudspeakers. As Jordan stepped into the terminal, he was met with a surge of activity. The air carried a distinct contrast to the solemn silence of the first-class cabin during the flight's final moments. Jordan adjusted the strap of his carry-on bag, checked his phone for messages, and began walking toward the exit. His business meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon, giving him time to settle into his hotel and review his presentation. But before he could fully immerse himself in his plans, a voice called out behind him. "Mr. Mitchell." Wait. He turned to see Linda Foster, the head of customer service, hurrying toward him. Her professional demeanor remained intact, but her expression carried a hint of concern. "Mr. Mitchell," she said as she caught up to him, "I just wanted to thank you again for your patience and understanding during the flight. The way you handled the situation was admirable, and I want to assure you that we take matters like this very seriously." Jordan smiled faintly. "Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. I hope this is an opportunity for reflection, not just for Katie, but for anyone watching." Linda nodded. "It absolutely will be. In fact," she hesitated, then continued, "I'd like to ask for your permission to use this incident as part of our staff training program. Your experience highlights something we need to address: how subtle biases can impact customer service. Would you be comfortable with that?" Jordan considered her request. While he wasn't keen on reliving the incident, he recognized the potential for positive change. "If it helps prevent this from happening to someone else, then yes," he said. Linda's face lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. That means a lot." A chance encounter. As Jordan resumed his journey toward the exit, he couldn't help but reflect on Linda's request. It was a reminder of how small actions could spark larger conversations. He was still deep in thought when a familiar voice called out again, not Linda's, but someone else's. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have a moment?" Turning around, Jordan saw the man in the tailored navy blue suit from the flight, David Chambers. He stood by the baggage claim area, a sleek leather briefcase in hand. Jordan nodded and approached. "Mr. Chambers," he said, "how can I help you?" David extended his hand again for a firm handshake. "I just wanted to commend you on how you handled yourself up there," he said. "Not everyone would have had the composure to address the situation the way you did." Jordan shrugged modestly. "I just wanted to make a point without making a scene." David smiled. "Well, you succeeded, and I think you made more of an impact than you realize." He paused, then added, "By the way, are you in Los Angeles for business?" Jordan nodded. "Yes, I have a meeting tomorrow with some investors for a tech project I've been working on." David's eyes lit up with interest. "Tech, you say? What kind of project?" "It's a platform designed to connect small businesses with affordable digital tools," Jordan explained. "The goal is to level the playing field, especially for entrepreneurs who don't have the resources to compete with larger corporations." David whistled softly. "That's impressive. I'd love to hear more about it. Here's my card." He reached into his pocket and handed Jordan a sleek business card with embossed lettering. Jordan took it, his curiosity piqued. "Thank you. I'll follow up." Katie's reflection. Meanwhile, Katie Barnes sat in the airline's staff lounge, her hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee. The once bustling room was quiet now, save for the faint hum of vending machines. She replayed the events of the flight in her mind, each moment sharper and more uncomfortable in hindsight. She thought about Jordan's calm demeanor, the passengers who had spoken up, and the way Linda had pulled her aside. Katie had always prided herself on her professionalism, but today had shaken that belief. Her actions had exposed a side of herself she hadn't wanted to confront, a side shaped by unconscious biases and unexamined assumptions. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Linda. "Katie, I've scheduled a meeting with HR for tomorrow. I believe this experience is an opportunity for growth, both for you and the team. Let's discuss how we can move forward." Katie sighed and set the phone down. Growth. The word sounded promising, but it also felt daunting. How could she grow from something that had made her feel so small? For the first time in her career, Katie realized that being a flight attendant wasn't just about serving drinks or ensuring safety. It was about how she made people feel. And today, she had failed. The seed of collaboration. Jordan arrived at his hotel, a sleek modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Los Angeles. As he settled into his room, he placed David Chambers' card on the desk and pulled out his laptop. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to look up David's law firm. A quick search revealed that David was a senior partner at a prestigious firm specializing in corporate law and social impact initiatives. Jordan couldn't help but smile. The chance encounter felt serendipitous, as though the universe had aligned to put him in the path of someone who could help amplify his mission. He drafted a quick email to David, thanking him for his support during the flight and expressing interest in discussing potential collaborations. The first steps toward change. Back at the airline headquarters, Linda Foster prepared for her meeting with HR. She had already begun drafting a new training module, one that would incorporate real-life scenarios like the one involving Jordan Mitchell. Her goal was clear: to create a workplace culture that prioritized empathy, awareness, and respect. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Change never was. But she was determined to set the wheels in motion. As she closed her laptop for the evening, Linda thought about Jordan's parting words. "I hope this is a learning experience, not just for how you treat me, but how you treat everyone." It was a simple statement, but its impact was profound. A quiet resolve. That night, as Jordan reviewed his presentation and Katie reflected on her mistakes, both were unaware of the ripple effect they had set into motion. For Jordan, the experience had reinforced his belief in the importance of standing up for oneself with dignity and grace. For Katie, it had ignited a journey of self-awareness and growth. And for Linda, it had become a catalyst for change within her organization. In the vast expanse of Los Angeles, under the same starry sky, their paths had diverged, but the lessons of the day would remain with them, shaping their actions and decisions in ways they couldn't yet imagine. A new day, a new opportunity. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Jordan Mitchell's hotel room, casting a golden hue over the polished wood floors and minimalist decor. He stretched and rose from the plush bed, ready to face a day brimming with promise. The sting of the previous day's flight still lingered in his mind, but he was determined not to let it overshadow his purpose in Los Angeles. His presentation, the culmination of months of hard work, was slated for that afternoon. Jordan believed in his project, a platform that could democratize access to digital tools for small businesses. It was more than a business venture. It was his way of giving back to the community and creating opportunities for those often overlooked. An unexpected invitation. As Jordan sipped his coffee and reviewed his notes, his phone buzzed. It was an email from David Chambers, the corporate lawyer he had met on the flight. Subject: breakfast and business. Good morning, Jordan. I hope you're settling into lay comfortably. I've been thinking about your platform, and I'd love to learn more. Are you free for breakfast? My treat. There's a great spot near your hotel. Jordan glanced at the clock. He had a few hours before his meeting and decided to accept the invitation. A meeting of minds. The cafe was nestled in a quiet corner of downtown Los Angeles, its patio adorned with potted plants and vintage string lights. Jordan spotted David sitting at a table near the entrance, a tablet and notepad in front of him. "Jordan, over here," David called, waving him over. The two men exchanged pleasantries, and soon their conversation shifted to Jordan's project. Jordan explained his vision with passion, detailing how the platform could empower small business owners to scale their operations and compete in a rapidly digitizing market. David listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When Jordan finished, David leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "This is impressive," David said. "You're addressing a gap that's often overlooked. But have you thought about the legal and financial frameworks you'll need to scale this?" Jordan nodded. "I've considered it, but to be honest, I'm still navigating that side of things. My focus has been on development and outreach." David smiled. "Well, you're in luck. This happens to be my area of expertise. I'd be happy to help you refine your strategy." Jordan's eyes widened slightly. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," David said. "But let's take it one step at a time. For now, focus on nailing that presentation today. Once you've secured your investors, we can discuss how to move forward." Katie's Day of Reckoning. Across town, Katie Barnes sat in a small conference room at the airline's Los Angeles office, her palms clammy as she awaited her meeting with Linda Foster and the HR representative. The events of the previous day had been a wake-up call, but Katie wasn't sure how to articulate her reflections. Linda entered the room, followed by the HR representative, a poised woman named Clara Ramirez. They greeted Katie and took their seats, their expressions neutral but expectant. "Katie," Linda began, her tone measured, "yesterday's incident was unacceptable. But I believe it's also an opportunity for growth, not just for you, but for our team as a whole." Katie nodded, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I understand, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I've been reflecting on what happened, and I realize that I made assumptions that were unfair and harmful." Clara leaned forward. "We appreciate your honesty, Katie. Growth starts with accountability. What do you think led to those assumptions?" Katie hesitated before speaking. "I think it's something I've internalized over time. I never stopped to question it until now." She looked down at her hands. "But I want to change. I don't want to treat anyone unfairly again." Linda exchanged a glance with Clara, then said, "That's a good start, Katie. We're going to enroll you in a series of workshops focused on unconscious bias and customer relations. Additionally, I'd like you to help us develop a training module based on your experience. I think your perspective could be valuable." Katie blinked in surprise. "You want me to help?" Linda smiled. "Yes, if you're willing. I think this could be a turning point, not just for you, but for the entire team." Katie nodded slowly, a spark of determination igniting within her. "I'd be honored to contribute." The presentation. Back at the conference center, Jordan stood in a sleek meeting room, his presentation displayed on a massive screen behind him. Across the table sat a group of investors, their expressions ranging from curious to impressed as Jordan outlined his platform's potential. His voice was steady, his passion evident in every word. He spoke not just about the technical aspects of the platform, but about the lives it could transform, small business owners gaining the tools they needed to thrive in a competitive market. When he finished, the room was silent for a moment before one of the investors, a woman named Susan Grant, broke into a smile. "Jordan, this is remarkable," she said. "I think you're onto something that could truly make a difference. I'm in." Another investor nodded. "Me too." Let's discuss the terms. Jordan felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over him. His hard work had paid off, and the platform he had poured his heart into was one step closer to becoming a reality. A call to action. That evening, as Jordan sat on the balcony of his hotel room, the city lights twinkling below, he received a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Katie Barnes. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to thank you again for your patience and grace during our flight. I've taken your words to heart, and I'm committed to becoming better, not just as a flight attendant, but as a person. Thank you for opening my eyes." Jordan read the message twice, a smile spreading across his face. It wasn't often that someone owned their mistakes so openly. He replied simply, "Thank you, Katie. Growth is a journey. Keep pushing forward." As he set his phone down, Jordan couldn't help but marvel at how interconnected their lives had become in such a short time. One flight, one confrontation, and one apology had set off a chain of events that none of them could have predicted. And though their paths might diverge again, the lessons they had learned would stay with them, a testament to the power of respect, resilience, and the courage to grow. Bridges built on grace. Jordan Mitchell's successful pitch had given him more than financial backing. It had renewed his confidence in his vision and himself. That evening, as he sat in a quiet corner of the hotel lounge, reflecting on the whirlwind events of the past 2 days, his phone buzzed. It was an incoming call from an unknown number. Hesitant but curious, he answered. "Hello." A tentative voice replied, "Mr. Mitchell, this is Katie Barnes. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Jordan sat up straighter. "Not at all, Katie. How can I help you?" I wanted to ask for your time," Katie began, her voice steady but tinged with nervousness. "I know we've exchanged messages, but I feel it's important to apologize in person. I'd also like to learn from you if you're willing to share your perspective. I don't want what happened on that flight to define me or how I treat others." Her request was unexpected, but something in her voice, genuine remorse mixed with a desire to grow, moved Jordan. He glanced at his watch. "I'm flying out tomorrow morning, but if you're free, we can meet here at the hotel for coffee tonight." "That would mean a lot to me." "Thank you," Katie said, relief evident in her tone. A conversation of change. An hour later, Katie arrived at the hotel, dressed simply but neatly, her usual flight attendant poise tempered by a touch of humility. She spotted Jordan seated at a small table near the window, his calm demeanor making her both nervous and eager. "Mr. Mitchell," she greeted him as she approached. "Jordan, please," he said, rising to shake her hand. They sat down, and for a moment, the air between them was heavy with unspoken tension. Finally, Katie broke the silence. "First, I want to thank you for agreeing to meet me," she said. "I've spent the past day reflecting on what happened, and I realize how much I let my assumptions and biases cloud my judgment. It was unfair to you, and I deeply regret it." Jordan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Acknowledging it is the first step, Katie. What matters now is what you do with that awareness." Katie looked down at her hands, then back at Jordan. "That's why I wanted to meet you. I've been doing some soul searching, and I realized that I've been operating on autopilot, absorbing societal biases without questioning them. I want to change, but I don't know where to start." Jordan leaned forward, his tone encouraging but firm. "Change begins with listening and learning, Katie. You have to seek out perspectives that challenge your assumptions. When you encounter someone who doesn't fit into your preconceived notions, ask yourself why those notions exist in the first place. It's not easy, but it's necessary." Katie nodded. "That makes sense. Do you think people can really change, though? I mean, truly change?" Jordan's gaze softened. "Absolutely. But it takes effort and humility. It's not just about feeling bad. It's about taking action. And Katie, from what I've seen so far, you're already on the right path by reaching out and taking accountability." Lessons shared. Their conversation shifted from the flight incident to broader topics. systemic biases, the power of self-awareness, and the importance of treating everyone with respect. Jordan shared stories of his experiences, both as a young entrepreneur and as a Black man navigating spaces where he wasn't always welcome. "It's not just about overt discrimination," Jordan explained. "It's the small, everyday things, the subtle dismissals, the assumptions, the way people treat you differently because of how you look or what they think they know about you. Those things add up." Katie listened intently, her initial discomfort giving way to a genuine eagerness to understand. "I've never thought about it that way," she admitted. "But now that I do, I can see how my behavior on the flight was part of that pattern. I don't want to contribute to it anymore." Jordan offered her a small smile. "Then use this experience as fuel to do better. Speak up when you see others acting unfairly. Be the change in your workplace and beyond." A ripple effect. As their conversation wound down, Katie felt a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced before. She thanked Jordan once again and left the hotel with a renewed determination to grow, not just for herself, but for the people she served every day. Jordan watched her go, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. He hadn't set out to change anyone's life on that flight, but perhaps this was one of those unexpected opportunities to make an impact. Bringing the lessons home. The next morning, Katie arrived at the airline headquarters for her first unconscious bias workshop. Linda Foster greeted her warmly, sensing a shift in Katie's demeanor. "Katie, I want to commend you for your commitment," Linda said as they walked to the training room. "It takes courage to face your mistakes head-on." Katie smiled. "I'm ready to learn. And I've realized that this isn't just about my job. It's about the kind of person I want to be." Over the next few weeks, Katie immersed herself in the workshops, participating actively and reflecting deeply on the lessons. She also worked closely with Linda to develop a training module for the airline staff, using her own experience as a case study. Jordan's next chapter. Meanwhile, Jordan returned to Atlanta, energized by his success in Los Angeles. He began preparing for the next phase of his project, with David Chambers providing legal guidance and helping him navigate partnerships with investors. One day, Jordan received an unexpected email. Subject: "Thank you for your wisdom. Dear Jordan, I wanted to let you know that the training program we discussed has been implemented at the airline, and it's already making a difference. Your words inspired me to push for change, and I'll always be grateful for the lessons you shared. I hope we cross paths again someday. Katie Barnes." Jordan smiled as he read the message. It was a reminder that even small moments of grace and understanding could create ripples far beyond what one might expect. As he closed his laptop and returned to his work, Jordan felt a renewed sense of purpose. His journey was far from over, but he knew he was on the right path, not just in his career, but in how he chose to navigate the world. Katie's journey of growth and Jordan's steadfast commitment to change had forged an unlikely connection between them, a bridge built on understanding, respect, and the courage to be better. It was a testament to the power of grace in the face of adversity and the lasting impact of choosing to rise above. The echo of change. A few months had passed since the pivotal events on the flight and in Los Angeles. For both Jordan and Katie, life had taken on a new rhythm, one shaped by lessons learned and opportunities seized. Their paths hadn't crossed again since their heartfelt conversation in the hotel lounge, but the echoes of that day reverberated in their respective lives. Jordan's vision blossoms. Jordan Mitchell's platform, Elevate Space, had quickly gained traction among small business owners. The combination of easy-to-use digital tools, scalable features, and community-focused design resonated deeply with his target audience. The platform wasn't just a business, it was a movement, empowering people who had long been excluded from the digital economy. Investors were pleased with the early success, but for Jordan, the true measure of impact came from the testimonials flooding in. A bakery owner in Detroit shared how Elevate Space helped her grow her online presence and triple her sales. A craftsman in rural Georgia wrote about how the platform allowed him to showcase his handmade furniture to customers across the country. These stories reaffirmed Jordan's belief that his work mattered. Yet, despite his growing success, he remained grounded. He continued visiting local businesses, speaking at community events, and advocating for equitable access to resources. One morning, while reviewing plans for Elevate Space's next update, Jordan received an invitation that piqued his interest. Dear Mr. Mitchell, on behalf of the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport Diversity Council, we would be honored if you would join us as the keynote speaker at our annual Inclusion in Service Conference. Your story and vision align perfectly with our mission to foster equity and understanding in all areas of service. Jordan paused, considering the irony. The last time he walked through Hartsfield-Jackson, it was as an anonymous passenger, dismissed and underestimated. Now, he was being invited back as a leader and changemaker. He accepted the invitation, knowing it was an opportunity to inspire others and continue the dialogue about respect and inclusion. Katie's transformation. Katie Barnes had undergone a profound transformation since the fateful flight with Jordan. The unconscious bias workshops and her involvement in creating the airline's new training module had shifted her perspective entirely. What had once been a job focused on efficiency and protocol became, for Katie, a calling to serve with empathy and authenticity. The training module she co-developed, titled Service Beyond the Surface, emphasized the importance of recognizing and challenging biases in customer interactions. It included practical exercises, role-playing scenarios, and real-life stories like her own. Katie also volunteered to lead sessions for her colleagues, sharing her personal journey with vulnerability and honesty. Initially, she feared judgment, but her peers responded with respect and admiration. Her openness inspired others to reflect on their behavior and attitudes. The airline's leadership noticed Katie's growth and dedication. She was promoted to a supervisory role, where she could mentor junior flight attendants and ensure the values of respect and inclusivity were upheld across teams. One day, Katie received an unexpected email from Linda Foster. Katie, I thought you'd like to know that Jordan Mitchell will be the keynote speaker at the upcoming Inclusion in Service Conference. I think it's a full-circle moment worth celebrating. If you'd like, I can arrange for you to attend as well. Katie stared at the screen, a mix of emotions swirling within her. She hadn't seen or spoken to Jordan since their meeting in Los Angeles. The idea of reconnecting with him, especially in this context, felt both daunting and exciting. She replied with a simple, heartfelt response. Linda, I wouldn't miss it for the world. The conference. A full-circle moment. The conference was held in one of Hartsfield-Jackson's expansive event spaces, decorated with banners promoting themes of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Attendees ranged from airline staff to corporate executives, each eager to learn and contribute to the dialogue. Jordan arrived early, taking a moment to absorb the atmosphere. The venue buzzed with energy, but he focused on the task at hand. His keynote speech wasn't just about recounting his experience on the flight. It was about challenging the audience to think deeply about the everyday actions that shape the lives of others. When it was time for him to take the stage, the room fell silent. Good morning, everyone, Jordan began, his voice steady and warm. It's an honor to stand here today and share my story. But more importantly, it's an opportunity to discuss how each of us can contribute to a culture of respect and inclusion. He spoke about the flight and Katie's behavior, careful not to name her but emphasizing the broader lessons it had taught him, and, ultimately, her. He shared how grace and accountability could coexist, how even uncomfortable moments could lead to growth if approached with openness and humility. As he concluded, Jordan's words echoed in the room. Inclusion isn't just a policy or a training module. It's a choice we make every day, in how we treat others, in how we challenge ourselves, and in how we build a world where everyone feels valued. Change begins with us, one interaction at a time. The audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that left Jordan momentarily overwhelmed. He stepped off the stage, greeted by attendees eager to thank him and share their own reflections. A reunion of growth. Amid the crowd, Katie stood to the side, watching Jordan with a mix of pride and apprehension. Finally, she approached him, her heart pounding. "Jordan," she said softly. He turned, his face lighting up in recognition. "Katie, I didn't know you'd be here." "Linda told me about the conference," Katie explained. "I wanted to hear you speak, and to thank you in person again." Jordan smiled. "You've already thanked me, but it's good to see you. How are things?" Katie shared her journey since their last meeting. The workshops, the training module, her promotion. "Your words stayed with me, Jordan," she said. "They pushed me to do better, to be better. I hope I've made you proud." Jordan's smile widened. "Katie, you didn't need to make me proud, but hearing how far you've come, it's inspiring. You took responsibility and turned it into something meaningful. That's what real growth looks like." As they stood together, surrounded by the buzz of the conference, they both felt a sense of closure and renewal. Their journey had been unexpected and challenging, but it had led them to a place of understanding and mutual respect, a testament to the power of grace, accountability, and the courage to change. The ripple effect. In the weeks that followed, the Inclusion in Service Conference sparked new initiatives within the airline and beyond. Jordan's speech was shared widely, inspiring discussions in workplaces, schools, and communities about the importance of everyday inclusion. For Katie, the conference marked not just a milestone in her career, but a turning point in her life. She continued her work with the airline, mentoring others, and advocating for change wherever she could. And for Jordan, the experience reinforced his belief in the interconnectedness of human lives. Every interaction, no matter how small, held the potential to create ripples of change. As their paths diverged once more, both Jordan and Katie carried with them the lessons they had learned, lessons that would continue to shape their lives and the lives of those they touched.